Hey guys, tonight we begin in ancient Egypt, right as the blistering sun creeps over the horizon and bathes everything in a relentless golden glare. Imagine it. No curtains, no snooze button, just harsh, unfiltered sunlight scorching through. Your reed-windowed hut, instantly turning your cozy sleeping mat into a sweaty, sticky nightmare. It's already hot enough to fry an egg, or rather, bake bread, on the stones outside. Honestly, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you are tonight. Drop your location and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're barely awake, rubbing gritty sand out of your eyes as you stumble out onto the dirt-packed street. There's no coffee shop, no instant caffeine boost here, just a dazzling expanse of sunlight and the loud, persistent braying of donkeys from somewhere down the dusty lane. Already, your day in ancient Egypt feels like one big test of endurance. You stretch your aching back, still stiff from sleeping on a bed made of woven reeds and straw, and brace yourself for the long day ahead. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptians were naturally early risers, or if their unforgiving sun forced them into reluctant dawn routines. Either way, there's no escaping it now. The heat wraps around you like a heavy woolen blanket, itchy, smothering, and entirely unpleasant. No gentle morning breeze, just thick, still air saturated with the scent of river mud, burning straw, and the distant odor of livestock. You immediately understand why ancient Egyptians depicted the sun god, Ra, as both mighty and merciless. Outside, your neighbors are already bustling around, chatting loudly and energetically despite the oppressive heat. Somehow, they seem immune to discomfort. Unlike you, a woman passes by, balancing a huge clay pot on her head with grace you can't imagine replicating. Her gaze says, "Yeah, get used to it." Your feet, wrapped hastily in thin sandals made from papyrus and leather straps, begin to roast against the baking hot earth. It's barely dawn, and the heat already feels personal, like an angry deity determined to punish you specifically. Around you, men and women hurry to their various tasks, unfazed by their sweaty brows and sun-beaten skin, moving like it's just another perfectly ordinary day, which it is, just not for you. Nearby, a small group of labourers gathers, joking loudly about how mild today's weather is, clearly sarcastic, though you're not entirely sure anymore. They seem happy, or maybe they've just accepted the inevitability of discomfort. Either way, you can't help but envy their resilience. A young boy rushes past, dragging a stubborn goat behind him, yelling something unintelligible at the animal that clearly wants no part in today's activities. You sympathize deeply with that goat. Your stomach growls, reminding you it's breakfast time. But don't expect anything tasty or refreshing. In ancient Egypt, breakfast isn't pancakes or avocado toast. It's beer. Warm, thick, grainy beer, fermented just enough to be safely consumed, but hardly enough to numb your dread at facing a scorching, endless day. In fact, if you're hoping to avoid alcohol, tough luck. Beer is safer than water, cleaner even, and full of calories that keep you going through hours of grueling work. Your meal, bread, sandy and dense, baked yesterday, or was it last week, and left sitting out overnight. You sigh, imagining gritty, bites and scratchy crumbs coating your mouth like unwanted seasoning. But first things first. The Nile is your lifeline. Before breakfast, before any relief, you must fetch water from its banks. It's a risky chore. You've heard neighbors whisper stories about crocodiles lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for careless morning bathers or sleepy water fetchers. You pause briefly, imagining scaly jaws snapping inches from your hand. But there's no alternative. The Nile isn't just water, it's your life, your irrigation, your survival. You can't exactly boycott your only water source, even if it does occasionally eat someone. So, gathering your courage, what little of it remains, you begin your reluctant trek toward the riverbank. Along the way, the scent of incense and spices wafts lazily through the hot air, blending with the less pleasant smells of manure and sweat. The whole world feels pungent, vibrant, and exhausting, and the day has barely begun. Approaching the Nile, you see others already at work. Women washing clothes, men drawing water, children playing perilously close to the river's edge, seemingly oblivious to the eyes beneath. It all seems normal to them, routine even, yet you can't shake your anxiety as you kneel down cautiously, dipping your pot carefully into the muddy water, watching the ripples nervously. Your heart pounds a little faster as something moves beneath the surface. A fish, maybe, or perhaps something hungrier. You quickly scoop your jar full, your breath quickening as you stand, backing carefully away. Did that log just blink? You're not sticking around to find out. With your pulse still racing, you hurry back, water sloshing down your leg, soaking your sandals, blending with sweat. You're hot, thirsty, and your day hasn't even truly started yet. Honestly, at this rate, you might just prefer risking crocodiles to enduring another sun-soaked morning. But here you are, back home, exhausted, sweaty, jar of questionable water in hand, wondering if tomorrow will be any easier. Spoiler alert, it won't. The water sloshes precariously as you carry your clay jug back inside, droplets evaporating almost instantly as they hit the dusty ground beneath your feet. You pause, wiping the sweat from your forehead and reconsidering the wisdom of your morning. Chores, already exhausted, and breakfast hasn't even begun. Entering your humble dwelling, you're greeted by the familiar, musty scent of dried reeds, stale bread, and slightly fermented grain. Ah yes, breakfast. If you imagined a crisp fruit salad or freshly squeezed juice, it's probably best you leave those dreams behind. Today, breakfast is the same as every day. Beer and bread. Ancient Egyptians loved consistency, perhaps to a fault. The bread sits on a low table, wrapped loosely in coarse linen. You unwrap it reluctantly, already feeling the gritty grains embedded in its dense, tough crust. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptians actually enjoyed the inevitable crunch of sand in their food, or simply accepted it as an unavoidable fact of life. You, personally, vote for unavoidable and unpleasant. Taking a tentative bite, you chew slowly. Yep, gritty. You wonder briefly if chewing louder could drown out your disappointment. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Yet, despite its questionable texture, this bread is your main source of nourishment, carbohydrates fueling your upcoming day of manual labor. It's not tasty, but it gets the job done, sort of like your morning alarm, which, by the way, was just a rooster screaming outside your window at dawn. Next comes the beer. This isn't the chilled, fizzy delight of modern days. No, your morning beverage is thick, grainy, slightly sour, and warm, served in a clay cup that's just a bit too small. For comfort, ancient Egyptians brewed beer continuously, meaning it's always available, but also always lukewarm, fermenting quietly in the corner of your home, bubbling ominously like a mysterious science experiment. You sip hesitantly, the tangy liquid coating your tongue. It's not refreshing, more like swallowing liquid bread with a suspicious aftertaste. Yet, weirdly, it's safer than water, which often harbors parasites that could ruin your entire week. In fact, beer was such a staple that workers building the Great Pyramids received daily beer rations, literally working for beer. Not exactly the employee of the month perk you'd hoped for, but it's all you've got. Nearby, your neighbor greets you cheerfully, holding his own mug aloft. Another beautiful morning, he says, without irony. You wonder briefly if the heat has melted his brain, or if he's genuinely adjusted to the daily breakfast disappointment. Either way, you nod politely, raising your mug in response, then immediately regret the extra sip. Outside your small dwelling, the day fully awakens. Children run by, shrieking and laughing, unfazed by the heat already creeping toward unbearable. Donkeys bray loudly, protesting their own breakfast of dry straw. Ancient Egypt seems perpetually busy, a constant swirl of movement and noise, utterly indifferent to your brewing headache and sandy bread. With breakfast finished, or rather endured, you contemplate your next task. The marketplace awaits, bustling with vendors shouting about fresh fish, figs, dates, and baskets full of questionable vegetables. Even in the earliest hours, it's chaos, a noisy, confusing chaos you're about to join willingly, or at least reluctantly. Before leaving your home, you grab your sandals again, now dried and stiff after their unintended Nile bath. They're scratchy and uncomfortable, just like everything else today. Linen clothes, although perfect for desert heat in theory, itch maddeningly against your skin. Ancient Egyptian fashion might look airy and stylish on tomb paintings, but wearing it feels about as comfortable as wrapping yourself in straw. Speaking of fashion, makeup is a daily necessity, regardless of gender or status. Your morning ritual includes lining your eyes with black coal. This isn't vanity, well, maybe a little, but mostly it's protection. Coal helps shield your eyes from glaring sunlight and repels flies. Yes, even your makeup has dual purposes in ancient Egypt. Practicality reigns supreme here, right alongside discomfort. You glance at your reflection in a polished bronze mirror. Not great, smudged coal, gritty teeth, sand-coated skin, but it'll have to do. Vanity isn't your main concern today. Survival is. Outside once more, you're immediately assaulted by glaring sunlight and swirling dust. No one warned you how omnipresent sand would be, in your food, clothing, hair, everywhere. Sand, you realize grimly, is your new permanent companion. An itchy and unwelcome one that never takes a day off. At least beer, despite its questionable qualities, dulls your annoyance slightly. You briefly consider drinking more. Ancient Egyptians routinely drank multiple beers daily, but that seems risky given the tasks ahead. Building pyramids or bargaining at the market is challenging enough without being slightly intoxicated. On the way to the market, you pass scribes diligently writing on papyrus scrolls, recording everything from taxes to the king's proclamations. Nearby, artisans carve intricate statues, indifferent to the heat, their faces serene, almost meditative. How do they remain calm while you're barely keeping it together after a simple breakfast? Ancient Egypt has its charm, but it's quickly losing appeal. The glamorous visions of golden treasures, pyramid tombs, and powerful pharaohs don't quite align with your sweaty, itchy, sandy reality. But, hey, at least breakfast is over. Until tomorrow, anyway. As you approach the crowded marketplace, you brace yourself for the coming ordeal. Vendors shout prices and promises in overlapping voices, a cacophony that'll likely test your patience as much as your appetite. But that's a story for another minute, another struggle in this exhausting ancient Egyptian day. For now, you clutch your empty beer cup, stomach rumbling suspiciously, and wonder if the breakfast parasites are already making themselves at home. Here's a comforting thought. The day has barely begun, and already you're questioning how anyone ever survived this. Spoiler, many didn't, but here you are, stubbornly moving forward anyway. Stepping into the bustling marketplace feels like diving headfirst into a river of chaos. All around you, merchants shout, customers haggle fiercely, and animals voice their objections loudly. It's sensory overload in every possible way. Noisy, vibrant, fragrant, and entirely overwhelming. You weave carefully through the maze of wooden stalls and colourful awnings, already sweating anew as the relentless sun beats down without mercy. The market air is thick with a mingled aroma of dried fish, spices, ripe figs, and unwashed humanity. It's an intense mix that assaults your senses, but oddly feels unmistakably alive. Unfortunately, that vibrancy also includes relentless sandstorms that occasionally blow through, coating everyone and everything in yet another unwanted layer of dust. Today, your mission is simple. Pick up some fresh vegetables, maybe a few dates, and hopefully avoid getting scammed in the process. Simple, but not easy. In ancient Egypt, bargaining is practically a blood sport, and you're not exactly a seasoned athlete. Your last attempt ended with you paying triple the fair price for bruised figs, and you swore you'd never again fall victim to such humiliation. At a stall, overflowing with plump onions and bunches of garlic, the vendor greets you with suspicious enthusiasm. His eyes sparkle brightly, sensing your hesitance, clearly ready to take advantage. You gesture awkwardly toward the garlic bulbs, hoping your silence might mask your obvious ignorance. No luck. He instantly demands an absurd price, eyes locked. On yours, with unwavering confidence. You counter meekly, your voice barely audible over the surrounding din. Instantly, he feigns offense, dramatically waving his hands as if your low offer personally wounded him. Historians still argue whether such theatrics were genuinely felt or merely elaborate acting, but either way, he's undeniably good at it. Nearby, another customer, overhearing your pitiful attempts, shoots you a look that's equal parts pity and amusement. Feeling exposed, you reluctantly agree to a slightly lower, but still painfully high price. Victory, it seems, remains elusive. Moving on, you spot dates piled high like gleaming brown jewels, tempting despite their sticky sweetness, attracting hordes of buzzing flies. Swatting away insects, you grab a handful and nod to the vendor, who smiles knowingly. Another battle begins. Your cautious offer again triggers exaggerated outrage, this time accompanied by a tirade about drought, scarcity, and the will of the gods. Eventually, you give in, paying more than you'd planned yet again, wondering if your bargaining skills, or lack thereof, might soon become legendary among local vendors. At least the dates smell delicious, their sweetness momentarily distracting you from marketplace humiliation. Nearby, a fish seller proudly displays Nile perch that looks suspiciously past its prime. Flies cluster enthusiastically, as if already claiming their dinner reservation. You quickly move past, relieved your diet today doesn't demand fish. Though pigeon, another common delicacy, isn't exactly appetizing either. Further along, rows of bright aromatic spices beckon: cinnamon, cumin, coriander. Each pile carefully arranged, each scent intoxicating enough to momentarily make you forget the heat and crowds. Unfortunately, their cost quickly reminds you this isn't a leisurely shopping trip. Every spice worth having demands painfully intense negotiations. Feeling adventurous, you consider dried figs displayed enticingly. Unfortunately, so does a particularly aggressive donkey, tugging hard at its rope in hopes of snagging a snack. You sidestep quickly, narrowly avoiding an embarrassing collision, but losing your chance at figs. Another small defeat in your morning of marketplace misadventures. As you navigate further, a vendor loudly promotes perfumes made from lotus flowers, claiming they'll please the gods and ensure good fortune. You pause skeptically. Would lotus perfume help your luck at bargaining? Probably not, though smelling less like sweaty linen certainly couldn't hurt. While contemplating this dubious investment, a sudden commotion distracts you. A heated argument between a pottery seller and customer erupts nearby. Voices rise dramatically, fists wave passionately, and you briefly wonder if you should intervene or simply enjoy this unexpected street theatre. Ancient Egyptians, it seems, never miss a chance for a good public debate, especially when money is involved. Choosing caution over heroics, you slip away unnoticed, clutching your overpriced onions and dates tightly. The market continues bustling, indifferent to your struggles and small victories. Here, every day is survival, not just physically, but economically and socially. Ancient Egypt may dazzle historians with golden artifacts and towering pyramids. But for the average person, like you, every day feels like an endless negotiation, rarely ending in your favor. Finally leaving the market chaos behind, you pause, to rest under a rare patch of shade, momentarily grateful for respite from sun and noise alike. Around you, ordinary life continues at an exhausting pace. Farmers guiding oxen through dusty streets, children chasing wooden toys, women expertly balancing clay jugs atop their heads with uncanny precision. You marvel briefly at their skill and resilience, silently admitting you probably wouldn't last long here. Your stomach growls again, perhaps from hunger, perhaps from breakfast's unwanted guests making themselves known. Either way, lunch promises. New challenges, new struggles, new discomforts. But that's ancient Egypt for you. Survival at its finest. Sand in your sandals, sunburn on your shoulders, humiliation at the marketplace. Yet somehow you keep trudging forward. And maybe that's the true mystery. Not pyramids or hieroglyphs, but how ordinary Egyptians faced each sweaty, sandy, fly-infested day and still managed smiles and laughter. For now, though, you'll settle for surviving lunch, assuming you can avoid Nile parasites or whatever culinary horrors await. Your adventure in ancient Egypt is just beginning, with plenty more chances to fail spectacularly. And something tells you, failure will find you sooner rather than later. As the marketplace fades into the dusty distance behind you, your weary footsteps drag slightly heavier. Ancient Egypt's charm at this point feels significantly less enchanting than advertised. You're starting to suspect those colourful hieroglyphics on temple walls conveniently left out the gritty details of daily life, like endless sand, relentless sunburn, and flies that consider you their new best friend. Speaking of flies, there they are again, buzzing tirelessly around your head as you move toward the Nile to rest and possibly cool off. Of course, the Nile isn't exactly a safe haven either. You recall your earlier crocodile scare and pause, reconsidering. Yet, the midday sun is relentless, driving you to risk at least dipping your toes in. Reaching the riverbank, you cautiously settle onto a large, warm rock, carefully scanning the water for any ominous floating logs. A few children splash nearby, completely oblivious to the potential danger lurking beneath. Clearly, they've adapted better than you have. Or maybe crocodiles are simply not interested in overly tired, sand-covered, slightly disgruntled adults. One can only hope. Dipping your feet into the Nile feels refreshingly cool for precisely 2 seconds before reality kicks in. The water is muddy, murky, and suspiciously filled with small, unseen things brushing against your toes. Ancient Egyptians regularly bathed here, believing the Nile possessed sacred healing properties. Yet, your modern skepticism is suddenly overwhelming. Historians still argue whether Egyptians actually enjoyed these baths or merely tolerated them because, well, alternatives were scarce. Deciding a quick splash is enough, you retreat from the water hastily, drying your feet on a rough cloth. Nearby, farmers irrigate their fields, diverting river water into narrow channels carved painstakingly into the earth. Agriculture here isn't just a profession, it's survival itself, a daily battle against heat, drought, and the occasional hungry hippo wandering in from the Nile. Watching their tireless labor, you're reminded that food here doesn't magically appear in neatly packaged supermarket aisles. Every onion, every date, every grain of barley requires sweat, patience, and stubborn determination. You suddenly appreciate your overpriced onions slightly more, but only slightly. In fact, life in ancient Egypt seems perpetually exhausting. Even moments of rest feel stressful, overshadowed by threats both seen and unseen. You glance nervously again at the river, where something definitely moved beneath the surface. You're fairly certain it's just your imagination, or possibly lunch's future main course, gliding innocently by. Either way, it's unsettling enough to move you quickly along. Heading homeward, you're immediately enveloped once again by swirling sand. It finds its way into your ears, your mouth, your eyes. Each gust a gritty reminder of why desert life isn't exactly thriving on your personal comfort scale. Ancient Egyptians famously revered the god Set, associated with storms and chaos. You're now convinced Set personally orchestrates your sand troubles, enjoying every itchy, gritty moment at your expense. Sand isn't your only tormentor. Flies continue their persistent harassment, undeterred by your repeated swats and frustrated grumbles. Egyptians often applied ointments infused with honey and herbs, thinking they'd repel insects. But the flies buzzing relentlessly around you suggest otherwise. Either ancient remedies weren't as effective as hoped, or you've attracted especially determined insects today. Arriving home, You close your eyes briefly in relief, only to realize your dwelling is essentially an oven. Mud brick walls, excellent at insulating heat, now trap midday sun inside, turning your room into a makeshift kiln. If your morning was uncomfortable, your afternoon promises outright misery. You sigh deeply, resigning yourself to the fact that today is simply a test of endurance, resilience, and possibly stubbornness. Settling onto your reed mat, you attempt a brief nap, hoping sleep might temporarily erase your discomfort. Ancient Egyptians often rested during the hottest midday hours. A sensible tradition, yet currently feeling futile in your unbearably warm dwelling. Sweat drips relentlessly down your forehead as you close your eyes, wondering if heat stroke might actually be preferable at this point. Your body sticks uncomfortably to the woven reeds beneath you, every small movement amplifying your discomfort. Sleep, you quickly realize, will not come easily. Outside, life continues noisily, indifferent to your struggle for rest. Donkeys bray loudly, neighbors argue energetically about whose goat damaged the garden, and children shriek in delight or distress. You're not sure which, nor do you particularly care. Ancient Egypt, you realize grimly, doesn't offer quiet afternoons. Silence is a modern luxury you deeply miss. As your futile nap stretches on, the heat somehow intensifies, your discomfort escalating into outright misery. You briefly fantasize about cold showers or icy lemonade, knowing neither exists here. Instead, you'll soon wake from your non-rested rest to continue your day's exhausting routine. More sand, more flies, more discomfort. Yet somehow, despite your sweaty, itchy, fly-covered misery, ancient Egyptians thrived here, creating wonders that have fascinated generations. They built monuments, temples, pyramids, all while enduring the same relentless heat, sandstorms, and insects currently. Driving you toward insanity, you're genuinely impressed, though perhaps just mildly annoyed by their stubborn determination. Finally, abandoning your hopeless attempt at rest, you sit upright, reluctantly preparing for whatever fresh discomfort the afternoon has planned. Perhaps you'll fetch more water, attempt another failed marketplace negotiation, or simply endure until sunset finally offers relief. Whatever awaits, you suspect it'll involve more gritty reality checks. Survival in ancient Egypt isn't glamorous. It's gritty, sandy, hot, and exhausting. Yet somehow, life here continues, resilient and vibrant, despite its constant, exhausting challenges. You grudgingly admire the toughness required for everyday existence here, even as you question whether you'll make it to evening without collapsing into a sandy, sweaty heap. But collapse isn't an option yet. So, brushing sand from your face, once more you summon what's left of your energy to face the afternoon. And who knows, maybe today, finally, you'll master the art of surviving ancient Egypt, though realistically, probably not. Still blinking away the gritty aftermath of your failed nap, you step back outside into the relentless afternoon sun. The temperature, impossibly, has risen even further, turning the entire landscape into one shimmering wave of heat. If ancient Egypt had a thermostat, it would be permanently stuck on Inferno. Today, your afternoon chore is laboring at the pyramid construction site, a task as thrilling as it sounds. You probably envisioned pyramid building as a majestic, awe-inspiring process guided by noble artisans and wise architects. Spoiler alert, reality involves less grandeur and significantly more sweating, grunting, and wondering why you ever thought a desk job was stressful. You trudge toward the building site, sandals scuffing the dusty road, feeling every grain of sand rubbing unpleasantly between your toes. Around you, fellow workers move in groups, laughing and chatting casually despite the grueling labor ahead. Clearly, they've embraced the discomfort, or have simply become numb to it. You, however, haven't reached this enlightened state just yet. Approaching the massive half-finished pyramid, you're momentarily awestruck despite yourself. Its colossal limestone blocks gleam blindingly white under the blazing sun, stacked precisely by sheer human effort. Thousands of workers, historians still argue, either volunteered willingly or were conscripted for labor. Either way, the scale and ambition of this project feels daunting and exhausting. Your supervisor greets you briskly, immediately assigning your task, hauling stone blocks into place alongside dozens of others. Each block weighs roughly the same as a small car, and you briefly consider feigning heatstroke, but quickly realize this would hardly spare you the effort. In ancient Egypt, labor laws weren't exactly generous. Grabbing a rough rope in your already blistered hands, you join your team, pulling and straining against gravity. Sweat instantly beads across your forehead, trickling stinging salt into your eyes. Every muscle protests loudly, reminding you that physical fitness wasn't exactly your specialty. Yet somehow, the block inches forward, a triumph, however small, and painful. Nearby, workers rhythmically chant, synchronizing their efforts as they lift and push. The chant is oddly comforting, a collective mantra that keeps morale high, even if your personal morale is teetering dangerously close to collapse. You briefly wonder if chanting louder could mask your wheezing breaths, but probably not. As you continue pulling, you overhear snippets of conversation about pyramid theories. Some workers speculate that these structures are tombs for kings, meant to secure safe passage to the afterlife. Others argue they're monuments celebrating divine rulers, designed to awe future generations. You're mostly concerned with surviving today. Afterlife journeys feel distinctly less urgent than your current dehydration. Finally, mercifully, the block slides into position with a heavy, satisfying thud. Relief floods your aching muscles, though brief. The next stone already awaits. Pyramid building never pauses, never slows, never ends, or at least that's how your afternoon feels. Historians still debate precisely how these stones were moved, whether by ramps, ropes, or sheer manpower. Your blistered palms and sore muscles strongly advocate for sheer manpower, though you'd personally welcome an easier theory. Maybe ancient aliens really did lend a helping hand, but sadly, none appear to be around today. Pausing for water, you gulp hastily from a shared clay jug, ignoring the questionable cleanliness. Hydration beats caution at this point. Your fellow workers laugh cheerfully, joking about sore backs and sunburns as though they're minor inconveniences. You're not quite convinced, but their camaraderie offers a small comfort amidst your discomfort. Suddenly, a supervisor shouts harshly. Someone dropped a stone, narrowly missing his foot. Tempers flare briefly, words exchanged heatedly, yet the incident quickly fades back into routine. Pyramid building tensions are common, fleeting like the occasional shade provided by passing clouds, rare and temporary. Speaking of shade, you glance hopefully skyward, but Ra, the sun god, remains relentlessly present, clearly unimpressed by your silent pleas. Shade is scarce in ancient Egypt, reserved mostly for royalty or temples. Workers, unfortunately, bake directly beneath an indifferent sky. Finally, after countless stones dragged and muscles protesting loudly, your supervisor calls a blessed break. Collapsing gratefully onto a patch of dusty ground, you close your eyes, feeling the day's labor settling deeply into your bones. Around you, conversations resume cheerfully, debates about gods, kings, and taxes oddly energetic despite everyone's exhaustion. You wonder briefly about this resilience, their ability to laugh amidst backbreaking labor and relentless heat. Perhaps surviving ancient Egypt isn't about comfort or convenience, but endurance, community, and sheer stubbornness. If so, you're admittedly failing spectacularly. But hey, tomorrow's another chance to improve, or fail differently. Resting. Quietly, you overhear snippets about evening plans, family meals, simple games, storytelling beneath stars. These small comforts remind you that life here, harsh as it seems, isn't without joy or humanity. Ancient Egyptians weren't solely pyramid builders. They were parents, siblings, friends, just people navigating life as best they could. The break ends abruptly, your supervisor signaling it's time to resume work. Standing slowly, your muscles protest again, reminding you why pyramid building wasn't your career goal. Yet here you are, reluctantly prepared to face more stones, more sweat, more exhaustion. As the sun dips slightly lower, shadows lengthen faintly across the pyramid's massive stones. You silently thank Ra for eventually deciding your day can end. But not quite yet. There's still more hauling, more pushing, more wondering how long humans can physically endure such labor. But endure they did. And you, somehow, must do the same. Ancient Egyptians built not only pyramids, but entire civilizations through sheer determination, resilience, and possibly stubborn pride. Today, you're learning firsthand exactly what that meant, and wishing deeply you weren't. Yet, beneath your sweat, dirt, and aching muscles, you feel oddly proud of your tiny contribution to history. Pyramid building isn't glamorous, but it's undeniably impressive, and today, you've become a small, begrudging part of it. Now, if only someone would invent sunscreen or air conditioning. Until then, you'll keep pulling stones, hoping tomorrow offers fewer pyramids and slightly more shade. Spoiler alert, it probably won't. With the day's grueling pyramid work finally behind you, the fading sun paints the sky in muted shades of orange and purple, briefly masking the harshness of the desert heat. You shuffle slowly homeward, sand caked into every imaginable crevice of your tired body, longing desperately for even a hint of modern comforts, perhaps a cold shower or a fluffy pillow, neither of which ancient Egypt seems interested in providing. Arriving at your mud brick dwelling, you quickly discover yet another discomfort awaiting you: your wardrobe. Egyptians famously dressed in loose-fitting linen garments, often depicted gracefully flowing on temple walls and tomb paintings. Reality check. Those elegant linen clothes are actually scratchy, uncomfortable, and stick relentlessly to your sweaty skin. You peel off your work garments, grimacing as each layer clings stubbornly, determined to prolong your misery. Nearby lies your wig, another iconic staple of Egyptian fashion. These wigs, carefully styled from human hair or plant fibers, signified status, fashion, and practicality, protecting shaved heads from relentless sunburn. Yet your wig, currently itchy, tangled, and sand-coated, feels more punishment than protection. Still, appearances matter, even when your appearance resembles a slightly overheated mop. Historians still debate how comfortable these wigs truly were for daily wear. Spoiler alert, your scalp votes emphatically, not very. But wigless, you risk sunburn, ridicule, or both. So back it goes, itchy and stubbornly awkward. Next comes makeup. Yes, again, this time, your evening ritual involves applying ointments and cosmetics designed for both beauty and practicality. Kohl lines your eyes heavily once more, its thick black paste supposedly warding off harmful spirits and insects alike. You remain skeptical, recalling vividly today's aggressive marketplace flies. Maybe evil spirits stayed away, but those flies certainly didn't get the memo. Additionally, ancient Egyptians applied scented oils and creams liberally, partly masking sweaty odors but primarily to repel persistent insects. Your ointment today, a thick paste combining honey, lotus blossoms, and animal fat, smells pleasant enough, yet feels sticky and unpleasantly greasy against your already clammy skin. A passing fly lands mockingly on your shoulder, clearly unimpressed by your efforts. Finally, jewelry. Egyptians loved adornments, from delicate necklaces and bracelets to heavy earrings made of gold, lapis lazuli, or faience beads. Yet wearing jewelry in reality feels less glamorous than it sounds. Necklaces rub uncomfortably against your sweaty neck. Bracelets clink distractingly, and earrings tug painfully at your sensitive earlobes. Fashion, you conclude, involves significant discomfort, yet Egyptians seemed willing, even eager, to endure it. Fully dressed, or perhaps burdened, once more, you step outside, prepared to join neighbors gathering socially as the evening cools slightly. Ancient Egypt, despite its challenges, deeply valued community. Even exhausted, social obligations beckon, drawing you reluctantly from potential rest. Nearby, your neighbors already gather, chatting animatedly about everything from today's pyramid labor to upcoming festivals. Conversation flows easily. Clearly, Egyptians thrive socially despite relentless daily hardships. You're both impressed and slightly envious of their boundless energy and cheerful endurance. One neighbor eagerly invites you to join a game of Senet, a popular board game played for thousands of years. Senet, depicted extensively in tomb paintings, combined strategy, luck, and religious symbolism. Unfortunately, you're terrible at it, consistently misunderstanding rules and moves. Historians still argue whether Senet was genuinely enjoyable or merely tolerated for social reasons. Your repeated losses strongly favor tolerated. Tonight's Senet game, predictably, begins poorly. Your opponent confidently moves pieces, reciting rules you vaguely remember but hardly comprehend. Spectators gather, their amused expressions clearly predicting another humiliating defeat. You half-heartedly roll wooden sticks, hoping luck might finally favor you. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Laughter erupts as your piece lands disastrously once again. You sigh deeply, accepting your inevitable defeat with forced grace. At least ancient Egyptians valued sportsmanship, though winning occasionally would admittedly feel better. Nearby, someone plays a musical instrument, a simple harp, its gentle notes drifting through the cooling night air. Music and storytelling provided cherished evening entertainment, offering moments of peace and connection amidst exhausting days. Tonight, at least briefly, you appreciate this shared human comfort. Grateful ancient Egypt wasn't solely hardship. Stories shared tonight range from heroic tales of gods battling chaos to humorous anecdotes of daily misadventures. You listen, quietly, noting familiar struggles of sandstorms, market scams, and fashion discomforts. Clearly, today's complaints were timeless. Ancient Egyptians endured, complained, laughed, and survived, just as you're attempting now. As stars gradually appear overhead, conversation quiets slightly, evening coolness finally offering relief. Yet even nighttime brings new discomfort. Mosquitoes quickly announce their presence, buzzing relentlessly around your head. You swat futilely, reminded again how little ancient Egypt cares about your comfort preferences. Despite mosquitoes, the mood remains pleasant. Neighbors chat softly, laughter occasionally punctuating stories. Nearby, children chase fireflies, their shrieks echoing playfully. Ancient Egypt, you realize, wasn't just pyramids and pharaohs. It was ordinary life, small joys, daily struggles, and moments exactly like tonight. Finally excusing yourself, you head homeward once more, sandals scuffing tiredly against the dusty earth. Your wig itches fiercely. Makeup feels sticky. Jewelry annoys you relentlessly. Yet somehow, despite discomfort, you're grateful for this glimpse into ancient Egypt's true reality. Not glamorous, not comfortable, yet undeniably human. Back home, preparing reluctantly for sleep, you reflect briefly on your survival thus far. Ancient Egyptians built civilizations, thrived socially, enjoyed simple pleasures despite relentless challenges. You've experienced discomfort, frustration, embarrassment, but also brief moments of joy, connection, community. Maybe surviving ancient Egypt isn't about comfort or convenience, but simply enduring, laughing occasionally, and finding meaning amidst constant challenges. And perhaps tonight, despite fashion struggles and board game humiliation, you've glimpsed exactly why Egyptians continued enduring, even happily. Yet with sand still itching relentlessly beneath your clothes, you genuinely question if tomorrow holds anything less exhausting. Spoiler alert, probably not. But tonight, for a moment, beneath stars and among neighbors, survival feels slightly less impossible. Tomorrow, you'll struggle again. More sand, more flies, more Senate humiliation. But tonight, at least briefly, you understand why Egyptians continued smiling through exhaustion. Maybe survival isn't impossible here, just uncomfortable. Extremely, constantly, scratchily uncomfortable. But hey, at least tonight you survived. At least tonight you collapse onto your reed mat, hoping for a moment of quiet relief, only to realize your rest is about to be rudely interrupted. Your stomach growls loudly, an unpleasant reminder of the approaching dinner. Another meal likely involving fish, pigeon, or something equally questionable. Ancient Egyptians weren't exactly renowned culinary innovators, at least not for everyday meals. Reluctantly, you rise again, stepping outside toward the communal cooking area, where neighbors have already gathered, chatting energetically around flickering fires. Pots bubble quietly, releasing aromas ranging from enticing to suspicious. Mostly suspicious, given your experiences today. As you join the circle, your neighbor greets you warmly, handing you a bowl of what appears to be lentils mixed with onions, garlic, and something vaguely green. You smile weakly in gratitude, not entirely convinced this meal won't end badly. Parasites, after all, were ancient Egypt's most persistent culinary guest. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptians actively enjoyed the repetitive menu of lentils, onions, bread, and fish, or simply accepted it due to limited options. Given your lukewarm enthusiasm, you personally lean toward grudging acceptance. Yet hunger overrides hesitation, and you dig in cautiously, bracing for sandy bites or suspicious crunches. To your pleasant surprise, tonight's lentils are palatable, if slightly gritty. Nearby, someone enthusiastically describes an upcoming festival dedicated to Hathor, goddess of joy, music, and, thankfully, better food offerings. You silently mark your calendar, hoping Hathor-inspired cuisine will surpass tonight's sandy lentils. Another neighbor approaches cheerfully, offering grilled fish skewers. Your stomach churns skeptically, recalling earlier market scenes of questionable freshness. Yet refusing feels impolite, so you reluctantly accept, silently hoping thorough grilling eliminated parasites, or at least masked questionable odors. Taking a cautious bite, you discover fish flavors heavily masked by spices, cumin, coriander, garlic, all helping disguise potential culinary hazards. Egyptians, you realize, mastered spices not merely for taste, but possibly survival, masking questionable freshness beneath layers of aromatic distraction. Conversation flows easily, neighbors exchanging gossip, jokes, and occasional complaints about taxes, work conditions, or fashion discomforts. Egyptians, despite hardships, found humor amidst daily struggles, sand, insects, heat becoming shared punchlines rather than solitary miseries. You briefly marvel at their resilience, wondering if tonight's laughter stems from genuine joy or communal coping mechanisms, probably both. Nearby, children chase each other playfully, seemingly unaffected by daytime heat or questionable cuisine. Childhood in ancient Egypt involved fewer creature comforts, yet children thrived energetically, happily, despite challenging conditions. Watching them, you're reminded briefly of simpler joys amid daily discomforts. Midway through dinner, your neighbor excitedly mentions rumors of royal visitors arriving soon. Pharaoh's officials periodically toured provinces, inspecting temples, collecting taxes, assessing community well-being, or at least pretending to. You wonder briefly how ancient Egyptians felt about royal visits. Excitement, anxiety, annoyance, probably all three simultaneously. Evening deepens slowly, conversations quieting slightly beneath emerging stars. Ancient Egyptians valued storytelling deeply. Evenings frequently spent sharing myths, legends, humorous anecdotes. Tonight, your neighbor eagerly recounts a humorous tale involving Thoth, god of wisdom, attempting unsuccessfully to teach Set. Diplomacy, a story clearly enjoyed despite countless retellings. You listen quietly, amused yet reflective, noting themes of divine foolishness, human imperfection, cosmic absurdity. Egyptians embraced laughter readily, recognizing life's absurdities through humor. You briefly wonder if today's personal absurdities, sandstorms, fly infestations, questionable dinners, might someday become humorous anecdotes rather than immediate annoyances. Probably not tonight, though. Your discomfort remains distinctly unfunny. Dinner finally concludes, neighbors dispersing slowly homeward, exchanging good-natured farewells. Heading home yourself, you reflect briefly on today's culinary adventures. Breakfast, beer, sandy bread, overpriced market dates, parasite-risking lentils. Ancient Egypt certainly offered culinary consistency, if not comfort. Reaching home, you're immediately assaulted once more by relentless evening mosquitoes, buzzing mockingly, despite your futile swats. Egyptians devised countless insect-repelling strategies: honey ointments, scented oils, smoke from burning herbs. Tonight, none seem particularly effective. Your mosquito entourage remains enthusiastic, relentless, and entirely unwelcome. Ancient Egypt's nightlife, you're quickly realizing, doesn't involve glamorous palace banquets or thrilling adventures beneath stars, at least not for ordinary Egyptians. Instead, evenings mostly feature insect battles, sweaty discomfort, persistent hunger, punctuated occasionally by laughter, storytelling, or communal bonding. Settling once more onto your reed mat, you close your eyes reluctantly, anticipating another sleepless, uncomfortable night. Egyptian sleeping mats, woven from reeds or palm fronds, provide minimal cushioning, each reed pressing insistently against your aching back, neck, shoulders. Historians still debate comfort levels provided by these mats. Your current misery strongly supports minimal. Around you, nighttime sounds gradually intensify. Jackals howling mournfully, frogs croaking rhythmically near the Nile, distant arguments echoing faintly. Ancient Egyptian evenings were rarely peaceful, noise pollution apparently timeless. You sigh deeply, silently envying modern soundproofing or even earplugs. Finally drifting uneasily towards sleep, you reflect briefly on today's relentless challenges: heat, labor, questionable cuisine, persistent insects. Ancient Egypt, glamorous historically, proves relentlessly uncomfortable personally. Yet Egyptians persisted, endured, even thrived amid discomfort. You're deeply impressed, though admittedly grateful. Tomorrow brings no more pyramid building, hopefully. Yet despite exhaustion, discomfort, mosquito buzzing, tonight brought small moments of joy, laughter, connection amidst daily struggles. Ancient Egypt wasn't merely pyramids, pharaohs, golden treasures. It involved ordinary humanity surviving daily discomforts together. Tonight, briefly, you experience that humanity: sandy lentils, communal laughter, mosquito frustrations included. Perhaps survival isn't impossible here, just relentlessly uncomfortable. Tonight, exhausted, yet oddly grateful, you're almost convinced you might survive another day, though realistically you'll likely complain the entire time. But for now, beneath stars and amidst mosquito buzzing, survival feels slightly possible. Uncomfortable, itchy, sandy, but possible nonetheless. Tomorrow promises new challenges, new discomforts, new reasons to doubt your survival skills. Yet tonight, briefly, you're grateful for surviving dinner, and perhaps even hopeful you'll manage breakfast tomorrow. Spoiler alert, breakfast remains beer, bread, and disappointment. But hey, at least tonight, briefly, you're optimistic. Mosquitoes notwithstanding. Just as sleep finally begins to claim you, a sharp, unexpected sting jolts you fully awake. Something small, stealthy, and decidedly unfriendly has decided to join your evening. Likely a mosquito, but in ancient Egypt, possibilities feel worryingly endless. Scorpions, spiders, beetles. Each creature enthusiastically competes to disrupt your attempt at peaceful rest. You sit up abruptly, swatting at the empty air, your hand connecting only with frustration. Nighttime pests, you're discovering, aren't merely annoying. They're relentless, persistent, and seemingly immune to your carefully applied insect ointments. Apparently, ancient Egyptian mosquitoes never got the memo that honey and lotus were meant to deter, not attract them. Frustrated, itchy, and now fully awake, you stumble toward the communal bathroom area outside your home, hoping a quick splash of water might relieve your growing discomfort. Yet even bathroom breaks here involve unwanted surprises. Privacy wasn't exactly prioritized in ancient communal settings. Approaching the dimly lit bathing area, you carefully inspect for unwelcome guests, scorpions, spiders, or the dreaded dung beetle. Ancient Egyptians revered dung beetles, associating their rolling movements with solar cycles and rebirth. Personally, you prefer admiring them from a safe distance, not sharing a midnight bathroom visit. Historians still argue about hygiene, standards in ancient Egypt, whether bathrooms were genuinely sanitary or merely less dangerous than outdoor alternatives. Your cautious footsteps strongly favor less dangerous, given current fears about what might lurk unseen. Fortunately, tonight's bathroom appears safe, or at least empty of obvious threats. You hastily rinse your face, splashing cool water against gritty skin. The brief relief is immediately overshadowed by fresh dread as something scuttles rapidly past your foot. Probably harmless, but panic feels justified given today's discomforts. Retreating swiftly, you hurry back toward your home, wondering if midnight hydration was worth potential encounters with bathroom wildlife. Egyptians seemingly tolerated nightly inconveniences better, probably through necessity rather than preference. Modern plumbing suddenly feels impossibly luxurious. Settling once more onto your mat, you sigh deeply, closing your eyes cautiously, expecting another interruption any moment. Yet surprisingly, sleep finally approaches quietly, undisturbed, for now. Dreams come quickly, vividly, possibly influenced by today's myriad discomforts. In your dream, you're chased relentlessly by enormous mosquitoes, each holding tiny market. Onions demanding exorbitant prices. You desperately bargain, each offer rejected dramatically. Vendors laughing mockingly. Clearly, today's marketplace humiliation deeply scarred your subconscious. Dreams held significant meaning in ancient Egypt, often interpreted as divine messages, warnings, or guidance. Pharaohs employed dream interpreters regularly, deciphering nighttime visions carefully. Tonight's dream symbolism feels clear. Avoid markets, onions, and mosquitoes tomorrow. Unfortunately, none seem realistically avoidable. You awaken abruptly again, heart racing slightly, dream echoes lingering vividly. Ancient Egyptians often sought dream protection through amulets, spells, or appeals to Bes, god of home and dreams. Tonight, you wish deeply for dream protection, or at least dreamless rest. Outside, nocturnal sounds continue relentlessly. Jackals howling mournfully, insects buzzing persistently, neighbors occasionally yelling in disputes echoing faintly. Ancient Egypt's evenings, you're discovering, lacked peaceful silence entirely. Earplugs, you realize grimly, represent another impossible modern luxury. Historians still debate precisely how noisy ancient Egypt truly was at night, whether residents adapted easily or constantly suffered disrupted sleep. Your current experience strongly favors disrupted sleep, personally advocating strongly for modern soundproofing. Restlessly, you toss and turn, each movement amplifying discomfort from your thin reed mat. Ancient Egyptian bedding, though practical, clearly lacked comfort entirely, each woven reed pressing insistently against sore muscles, preventing restful sleep entirely. Frustrated, you rise again briefly, stretching stiffly, muscles protesting loudly. Ancient Egyptians regularly suffered chronic backaches, joint pains, physical discomforts from daily labors. You're quickly joining them, realizing daily struggles weren't merely inconvenient, but physically demanding. Returning reluctantly to your mat, you reflect briefly on today's relentless challenges: heat stroke risk, pyramid labor, marketplace embarrassment, fashion discomfort, insect assaults. Ancient Egypt, despite glamorous historic portrayals, proves personally relentless, uncomfortable, exhausting. Yet Egyptians persisted, even thrived despite hardships. Tonight, beneath stars and mosquito buzzing, survival feels distinctly uncertain. Ancient Egypt continually tests physical endurance, emotional resilience, adaptability, tests you're admittedly failing spectacularly tonight. Yet, perhaps tomorrow offers new opportunities, either fewer mosquitoes or better coping skills, though neither seems likely. Sleep finally returns cautiously, dreams mercifully less vivid this time. Your breathing deepens slowly, muscles relaxing incrementally, discomfort momentarily fading into background noise, though mosquitoes continue buzzing mockingly nearby. Finally drifting uneasily into sleep, your last conscious thought briefly admires ancient Egyptian resilience despite relentless challenges. Tomorrow promises new discomforts, new frustrations, new reasons to doubt personal survival skills. Yet tonight, briefly, you're grateful simply to rest. Mosquitoes, sand, discomfort notwithstanding. Maybe surviving ancient Egypt isn't impossible, just relentlessly uncomfortable. Tomorrow, you'll likely complain extensively again. But tonight, briefly, you're almost convinced survival remains possible. Spoiler alert, breakfast remains beer, bread, disappointment. But at least tonight, beneath relentless buzzing and discomfort, you're cautiously optimistic. Survival uncomfortable, frustrating, exhausting, yet possible nonetheless. Tonight, briefly, survival feels almost achievable, though tomorrow likely changes your opinion dramatically. Morning comes sooner than you'd like, because in ancient Egypt, the sun doesn't politely wait until you're ready. Instead, Ra rises triumphantly, blazing relentlessly through your reed-covered windows, determined to ruin whatever small bit of sleep you manage to snatch between mosquito attacks and strange dreams. Your eyelids flutter open reluctantly, greeted instantly by glaring sunlight, sand-coated sheets, and yet another unwelcome dose of reality. Today, you've been assigned temple, duty, and honor, supposedly, though you're already skeptical given your track record here. Temples in ancient Egypt weren't merely religious buildings. They were bustling centers of daily life, politics, and, most importantly, rituals that, unfortunately, required your direct participation today. You dress hurriedly, painfully aware. Your linen clothing remains itchy, uncomfortable, and sand-infused from yesterday's adventures. Yet appearances matter in temples, particularly cleanliness. Priests required meticulous hygiene, often bathing multiple times daily in temple pools. Before rituals, you, personally, would appreciate fewer baths and more mosquito-free nights, but ancient Egypt rarely prioritizes your preferences. Approaching the temple, you're immediately awed despite discomfort. Massive stone columns tower above you, decorated intricately with colorful hieroglyphs depicting gods, kings, and various divine adventures. Temples symbolize connections between heaven and earth, humanity and divinity. Spaces both awe-inspiring and slightly intimidating, particularly today. Inside, the air smells heavily of incense, lotus blossoms, and spices. Priests bustle efficiently, preparing offerings, chanting softly, performing complex rituals you've barely begun understanding. Your job today, fortunately or unfortunately, involves assisting with incense preparation, seemingly straightforward yet surprisingly complicated. The priest instructing you demonstrates carefully, combining resins, herbs, oils precisely, chanting quietly as he works. Incense wasn't merely fragrance. It symbolized purification, protection, divine communication. Each ingredient held symbolic meaning, combined carefully to achieve specific ritual effects. You attempt replication cautiously, mixing ingredients, hesitantly, unsure whether incorrect combinations risk offending gods or merely embarrassing yourself publicly. Either scenario feels possible, though embarrassment admittedly seems slightly more immediate. Nearby, another priest prepares offerings, food, wine, floral arrangements carefully arranged before statues of gods. Offerings symbolized gratitude, appeasement, communication between humanity and divinity. Historians still debate precisely how Egyptians viewed their gods: reverence, fear, affection. Observing today's rituals closely, you'd guess a complex mixture, much like your incense ingredients. Suddenly, a loud commotion erupts nearby, a small group arguing heatedly about ritual specifics. Ancient Egyptian temples weren't merely serene spiritual spaces. They hosted lively debates, arguments, even occasional disputes regarding proper ritual performance. Today's dispute involves appropriate offerings to Sekhmet, goddess of war, and healing. Offerings too generous might imply desperation, too modest risks offense. You briefly marvel at complexities involved. Grateful your incense duties remain simpler, though still frustratingly complicated. Returning attention reluctantly to your incense mixture, you cautiously ignite a small portion, releasing fragrant smoke upward. Watching carefully, you half expect immediate divine response. Approval, rejection, or possibly mocking laughter at your obvious ritual incompetence. Instead, smoke rises quietly, fragrance pleasant, yet ambiguous, perhaps divine, indifference or polite acceptance. Either way, your relieved immediate smiting remains absent. Today's discomfort quota already feels adequately fulfilled. Finally concluding your incense preparation, hopefully acceptably, you're summoned elsewhere, unfortunately, to assist. Briefly with mummification rituals occurring deeper within temple confines. Mummification wasn't merely funerary, it symbolized rebirth, renewal, eternity, deeply sacred rituals handled meticulously. Entering cautiously, you immediately regret volunteering assistance. Mummification involved complex processes including removing internal organs, treating bodies with natron, resin, bandages meticulously wrapped. Ancient Egyptians believed preserving bodies ensured safe afterlife passage. Yet personally witnessing rituals feels deeply unsettling, particularly given your current physical and emotional exhaustion. You assist, minimally, handing materials, carefully, avoiding unnecessary glances toward processes occurring nearby. Ancient Egyptians revered death profoundly, rituals intricate, respectful, spiritual. Yet personally, your grateful current duties remain minimal. Today's survival challenges feel adequately difficult already. Finally released mercifully. From mummification duties, you retreat gratefully outdoors, inhaling deeply fresh air. Grateful sunlight, even if blisteringly hot, provides welcome relief. Temples offered spiritual comfort, ritual complexity, deep cultural significance. Yet today's personal discomfort admittedly overshadows spiritual appreciation entirely. Resting briefly beneath minimal shade, you reflect briefly on today's temple. Adventures, incense complications, ritual debates, uncomfortable mummification assistance. Ancient Egypt, despite glamorous historical portrayals, proves personally exhausting, uncomfortable, relentlessly challenging. Yet Egyptians persisted, endured, created cultural richness despite hardships. Your stomach growls quietly, reminding. Lunch approaches rapidly, another questionable culinary adventure inevitably awaiting you. Yet briefly, beneath relentless heat and amidst personal discomfort, you're genuinely impressed. Ancient Egyptians navigated complexities, rituals, challenges daily, surviving, thriving, creating, despite relentless discomfort. Maybe survival isn't impossible here, merely exhausting, uncomfortable, challenging, constantly. Tonight, you'll likely complain again extensively, yet briefly, beneath temple columns and incense fragrance, survival feels cautiously achievable. Itchy clothing, mosquito frustrations notwithstanding. Spoiler alert, dinner likely remains lentils, fish, disappointment. Yet tonight, briefly, you're cautiously optimistic, survival uncomfortable, frustrating, exhausting, yet possible nonetheless. Today brought incense frustrations, mummification discomfort, relentless heat. Yet amidst discomfort, briefly, you're grateful experiencing ancient Egypt's humanity, complexities, resilience firsthand. Tomorrow promises new discomforts, new frustrations, new reasons doubting survival skills. Yet briefly, beneath temple columns, incense smoke, you're cautiously hopeful. Surviving ancient Egypt remains possible. Tonight, exhausted yet oddly grateful, you're almost convinced survival remains achievable, though tomorrow likely changes your opinion dramatically. Leaving the temple behind, you step into the full force of afternoon heat. Ancient Egypt has apparently decided today wasn't uncomfortable enough yet. Every exposed surface, roads, buildings, even your skin, feels scorchingly hot, baking relentlessly under Ra's indifferent gaze. You briefly consider retreating homeward, hoping desperately for a chance to rest. Unfortunately, another obligation awaits. A visit to the riverbank, this time not for leisure, but to help neighbors collect reeds and papyrus stalks for basket weaving and writing material. Ancient Egypt, you're discovering, leaves little room for personal downtime. Approaching the Nile again, you're immediately wary, recalling previous crocodile encounters, real or imagined. Today, however, neighbors gather confidently along banks, working efficiently, chatting cheerfully, despite midday discomfort. Clearly, Egyptians developed resilience against discomfort, or simply resigned themselves to inevitable challenges. Joining, reluctantly, you're handed a harvesting tool, simple yet sharp, designed precisely for cutting papyrus stalks quickly, efficiently. Papyrus, abundant along Nile banks, provided essential materials: paper, baskets, sandals, boats even. Ancient Egyptians valued papyrus deeply, yet harvesting required cautious balance, avoiding cuts, crocodiles, slipping into muddy water. You work cautiously, slicing stalks hesitantly, constantly scanning water nervously. Nearby, neighbors laugh, good-naturedly at your obvious anxiety, reassuring crocodile sightings rare, mostly exaggerated marketplace gossip, meant primarily for entertainment or dramatic effect. You nod politely, unconvinced, personally believing cautious vigilance entirely justified. Historians still debate precisely how dangerous Nile crocodiles truly were. Frequent threats or merely occasional nuisances exaggerated dramatically. Your current caution strongly favors frequent threats, though possibly influenced significantly by today's cumulative exhaustion, discomfort, paranoia. Harvesting continues quietly, each stalk carefully cut, bundled tightly, set aside for future use. Ancient Egyptians developed papyrus processing meticulously, cutting, soaking, pressing fibers carefully, creating durable writing material central to communication, record-keeping, storytelling. Personally, you marvel briefly at this ingenious innovation. Paper precursor significantly improving communication, civilization advancement. Unfortunately, personal marvel quickly overshadowed by discomfort, mosquitoes buzzing relentlessly, sunburn intensifying painfully, hands blistering slightly from unfamiliar labor. Ancient Egypt continues reminding daily survival less glamorous historically than personally imagined initially. Finally finishing harvesting, neighbors thank you warmly, genuinely appreciative despite your obvious inefficiency, discomfort, anxiety. Ancient Egyptians valued community deeply, helping neighbors instinctive rather than obligatory. You're genuinely impressed briefly by their generosity, resilience, cheerful endurance despite daily hardships. Heading homeward finally, you pause briefly beneath minimal shade, sipping cautiously from clay water jug. Water tastes slightly muddy, gritty yet refreshing despite questionable purity. Ancient Egyptians frequently drank muddy Nile water, historians debating extensively about health implications, parasite prevalence. Your current thirst significantly outweighs health concerns, personally advocating strongly immediate hydration over long-term caution. Resting briefly, you're joined unexpectedly by neighbor's pet cat, a small, sleek creature approaching cautiously, eyes watching suspiciously. Egyptians revered cats deeply, associating them strongly with goddess Bastet, protection, fertility, domesticity. Cats symbolize good fortune, home protection, spiritual guardianship. Personally, you're skeptical, particularly given current cat's obviously judgmental stare, suggesting deep suspicion about your survival skills, fashion sense, general competence. Tentatively, you extend hand cautiously. Cat immediately retreats disdainfully, clearly unimpressed entirely. Ancient Egyptians often depicted cats affectionately, lovingly. Personally, current cat encounter feels significantly less affectionate, entirely judgmental. Yet Egyptians valued cats deeply, tolerating quirks, personality flaws enthusiastically. Personally, you remain unconvinced entirely regarding cat adoration, particularly given today's cumulative discomfort, exhaustion, personal humiliation. Returning, reluctantly homeward. Finally, you're immediately assaulted again by relentless heat inside dwelling. Mud brick homes provided minimal insulation. Excellent retaining heat, unfortunately significantly less effective releasing it later. Ancient Egyptian homes, though practical, provided minimal personal comfort entirely. Your current exhaustion, heat stroke symptoms strongly supporting historical claims regarding discomfort levels. Settling finally onto reed mat, you sigh deeply, closing eyes cautiously, fully anticipating immediate interruptions, mosquito assaults, scorpion sightings, noisy neighbors. Ancient Egypt continues reminding survival significantly more exhausting personally than glamorously depicted historically. Yet Egyptians persisted, endured, created civilization despite daily challenges, discomforts. Historians frequently marvel Egyptian civilization resilience, pyramids, temples, hieroglyphs admired extensively. Personally, you're significantly more impressed currently regarding daily resilience, surviving heat stroke, insects, uncomfortable homes, relentless obligations. Ancient Egyptians persisted remarkably despite hardships. Tonight, exhausted yet genuinely appreciative, you're significantly impressed entirely regarding survival skills historically overlooked frequently. Restless sleep approaches gradually. Each, discomfort amplified by cumulative exhaustion, physical aches, emotional frustrations. Ancient Egyptian survival significantly more challenging personally than initially imagined historically. Yet Egyptians endured remarkably, creating civilizations significantly admired historically, personally respected deeply, currently. Tomorrow promises new discomforts, frustrations, obligations. Yet tonight, exhausted yet genuinely appreciative regarding survival skills developed significantly personally throughout today's challenges. You're cautiously hopeful regarding survival possibilities. Maybe ancient Egypt isn't impossible, just relentlessly uncomfortable personally, historically impressive significantly. Tonight, exhausted yet genuinely appreciative regarding small survival achievements personally accomplished despite challenges, you're cautiously optimistic. Tomorrow likely proving significantly more challenging personally, historically enlightening, extensively. Spoiler alert, breakfast remains beer, bread, personal disappointment significantly. Yet tonight, briefly beneath relentless buzzing, sand-covered sheets, personal discomfort extensively accumulated today, you're cautiously optimistic. Survival personally challenging significantly, historically impressive extensively. Tonight, exhausted yet genuinely appreciative regarding survival possibilities personally achieved despite relentless discomforts significantly accumulated historically, you're cautiously hopeful. Tomorrow likely proving significantly more challenging personally, historically impressive extensively. For now, beneath stars, mosquito buzzing, personal discomfort significantly, you're grateful surviving ancient Egypt personally, historically appreciative extensively. Tomorrow likely changing opinion dramatically. Morning returns mercilessly, your tired body protesting as sunlight slices aggressively through the reed-covered openings of your hut. Ancient Egypt's daily rhythm, dictated stubbornly by Ra's unforgiving schedule, leaves zero room for personal comfort or leisurely wake-ups. Today, unfortunately, promises even fewer comforts than yesterday. You rise stiffly, muscles aching from yesterday's papyrus harvesting, hands still blistered and tender. Your stomach growls impatiently, but you're wary. Breakfast here isn't just repetitive, it's potentially hazardous. The bread is gritty, the beer tepid, both served with a side of uncertainty. Ancient Egyptian culinary standards rarely prioritize flavor or safety above practicality. Yet, Hunger forces compromise. You bite cautiously into stale bread, chewing resignedly, sand crunching loudly between teeth. Historians argue whether ancient Egyptians willingly accepted sandy meals or secretly resented them. Your gritty mouthful strongly votes resentment. Washing it down hastily with lukewarm beer, you briefly imagine modern breakfast comforts, coffee, pastries, anything less gritty. But reality quickly reasserts itself. Today's agenda involves medical care, specifically visiting the local healer regarding your blistered hands. Ancient Egyptian medicine, despite impressive historical reputation, involved treatments significantly less comforting personally. Mostly herbal remedies, magical spells, questionable ointments. You're cautiously skeptical, particularly recalling previous rumors involving crocodile dung treatments, possibly medicinal, likely horrifying. Approaching healers' dwelling nervously, you're greeted warmly. A reassuring start, though healers. Smiling enthusiasm slightly unsettling given your blistered hands. Obvious discomfort. Ancient Egyptian healers combined practical treatments, spiritual rituals seamlessly. Health viewed holistically, combining physical ailments, spiritual imbalances. Personally, you'd strongly prefer minimal spiritual involvement today. Simple. Ointment significantly preferable to magical incantations, crocodile dung especially. Explaining injury cautiously, healer nods sympathetically, inspecting blistered palms carefully. Reaching swiftly toward shelf containing various mysterious jars, healer selects one confidently, opening dramatically, releasing pungent odor. Crocodile dung unmistakable, personally horrifying. Ancient Egyptians frequently utilized crocodile dung medicinally, believing strongly antiseptic properties. Historians debate effectiveness extensively, your immediate skepticism significantly outweighing scholarly debate entirely. Healer applies ointment enthusiastically, chanting softly, AI, prayer-invoking goddess Sekhmet. Divine healer frequently appealed during illnesses, injuries. Sekhmet, goddess of war, plague, healing, an intriguing divine combination, though personally you'd prefer deity significantly less warlike involved today's treatment, particularly given crocodile dung involved significantly. Despite odor, discomfort, personal skepticism, you remain polite, nodding appreciatively, silently praying Sekhmet genuinely sympathetic today. Healer reassures confidently, ointment effective historically, spiritually powerful significantly. Personally, you're significantly skeptical, hoping primarily minimal infection results, significantly outweighing personal discomfort currently endured. Leaving healer's dwelling gratefully, odor lingering unpleasantly, you cautiously inspect. Hands, dubious regarding ointment effectiveness, personally horrified significantly by crocodile dung involvement historically. Yet, ancient Egyptians trusted healers implicitly, combining spiritual faith, practical medicine significantly impressively historically, personally unsettling currently. Nearby, villagers gather discussing upcoming Nile festival, celebrating annual flooding significantly vital agricultural fertility historically. Ancient Egyptians viewed Nile reverently, flooding representing divine blessings significantly. Personally, you're significantly anxious. Nile flooding beneficial agriculturally, yet potentially hazardous personally, given current discomfort significantly endured historically. Returning homeward cautiously, odor lingering persistently despite attempted washing repeatedly, you're significantly uncomfortable personally, though historically impressed extensively regarding ancient Egyptian holistic medicine. Spiritual faith deeply integrated significantly, despite discomfort personally experienced currently. Homeward finally, you're greeted surprisingly warmly by neighbor's cat, previously disdainful significantly, currently approaching curiously. Egyptians revered cats deeply, associating significantly with bastet, protection, domesticity, spiritual guardianship. Personally skeptical previously, you're cautiously hopeful, perhaps personal discomfort, crocodile dung odor significantly improving feline relationships, historically strained previously. Tentatively extending hand cautiously, cat approaches, hesitantly, sniffing cautiously, recoiling immediately, Odor evidently problematic significantly. Ancient Egyptians valued cleanliness extensively. Personal hygiene vital spiritually, socially, historically. Your current condition significantly violating standards, personally uncomfortable, historically humiliating. Inside dwelling finally, odor lingering persistently. You're significantly frustrated personally. Historically intrigued regarding ancient Egyptian medical practices, combining spirituality, practicality seamlessly. Historically impressive significantly, personally uncomfortable extensively. Historians frequently marvel ancient Egyptian medical sophistication significantly, diagnoses precise, treatments advanced historically, spiritually integrated significantly. Personally, your current discomfort significantly overshadowing historical admiration entirely. Crocodile dung treatments personally horrifying, odor lingering significantly despite washing repeatedly. Settling finally onto reed mat, still uncomfortable, significantly, odor persisting stubbornly. You briefly reflect regarding today's adventures, historically enlightening extensively, personally exhausting significantly. Ancient Egyptian survival significantly more challenging personally than historically portrayed extensively. Yet Egyptians persisted remarkably, creating civilization significantly impressive historically, personally exhausting extensively. Tonight, promises questionable dinner significantly, mosquito assaults inevitably, sleep discomfort entirely predictable personally. Yet briefly, beneath relentless buzzing, personal exhaustion significantly, you're cautiously optimistic, survival significantly, uncomfortable personally, historically impressive extensively. Tomorrow promises new discomforts significantly, frustrations, inevitably survival questionable personally. Yet tonight, beneath relentless buzzing, lingering crocodile dung odor significantly problematic personally, you're cautiously optimistic, survival significantly uncomfortable personally, historically impressive extensively. Tonight, exhausted yet genuinely, appreciative historically, personally frustrated significantly, survival uncomfortable, exhausting significantly, historically enlightening extensively. Tomorrow, likely changing opinion dramatically, yet tonight, briefly, beneath mosquito buzzing, crocodile dung lingering significantly, you're cautiously hopeful regarding survival possibilities significantly, personally uncomfortable extensively, historically enlightening significantly. For now, beneath stars, mosquito buzzing significantly problematic personally, crocodile dung lingering persistently, historically unpleasant significantly, you're grateful surviving ancient Egypt personally, challenging significantly, historically impressive extensively, tomorrow likely changing opinion dramatically. Dinner, once again, is suspiciously fishy. Not metaphorically, no. You mean it literally smells like it lost a fight with the sun and then gave up on being edible. You sit cross-legged on a woven mat, clutching a small bowl of pigeon stew that may or may not have been left out since yesterday. The smell hovers somewhere between mildly spiced and please don't eat this, but hunger wins. Hunger always wins in ancient Egypt. Your neighbor, chewing contentedly, gestures to your bowl and says something encouraging. You nod politely while poking the stew with a carved wooden spoon, hoping it doesn't poke back. Ancient Egyptians frequently dined on fowl, duck, goose, and pigeon were common protein sources, especially for those not wealthy enough to feast on beef or pork. That said, refrigeration wasn't a thing. You're trusting today's pigeon is at least from today or yesterday, not last week. Still, you eat, slowly, carefully, and as the last bite goes down, tough, gamey, suspiciously chewy, you realize that food poisoning might be the closest thing ancient Egypt offers to a day off. A dark thought, sure, but honestly, not the worst option right now. Around you, the evening meal continues with laughter and chatter. Someone tries to trade dates for another handful of stew. Another offers garlic in exchange for beer. Bartering isn't just for the marketplace. Meals are their own mini economies, and negotiation is as important as digestion. You briefly consider offering a carved bead for someone's onion. Then remember the last time you tried to trade. you ended up with a bruised fig and lifelong trust issues. Historians still argue whether meals were social, sacred, or simply necessary. Based on tonight's atmosphere, it's probably all three. Even in discomfort, there's bonding. Despite the flies, the sand, and the looming threat of digestive catastrophe, you're laughing a little too. Maybe it's the beer. Or maybe this is what passes for joy after a long day of crocodile dung and scorching sun. Someone pulls out a board and begins setting up Senet. Oh no, not again. Senet, the favorite board game of ancient Egypt, involves small tiles, a lot of luck, and absolutely zero forgiveness. You lost yesterday. You'll lose again today. But you're too polite to decline the invitation, especially when your opponent has already announced your participation to the entire group. The board is simple. 30 squares in a grid of 3, rows with intricately carved game pieces shaped like birds, cones, and little sticks. The rules? Debatable. Everyone here seems to play slightly differently, and the version you're subjected to tonight includes an extra penalty space called House of Humiliation. You're told, kindly, that it suits you. You roll the casting sticks, flat on one side, rounded on the other, and groan, bad roll, again. You move your piece forward and immediately land in the House of Water. Apparently, you have to start over. Again. Your opponent offers a sympathetic look that fails to hide his glee. Senet wasn't just entertainment. It had spiritual undertones, believed to represent the soul's journey through the afterlife. Winning was symbolic of achieving divine favor. Based on your performance, the gods have firmly blocked your calls. Still, the group cheers and groans with every roll, turning this humble game into a full-blown event. There's no gold prize, no grand reward, just camaraderie, ritual, and the brief illusion of control in a world dominated by sandstorms and stomach cramps. As your final game piece is casually booted back to the starting row for the third time, you can't help but laugh along. Maybe the lesson isn't winning. Maybe it's surviving long enough to keep playing. After the game, someone produces a crude lute and begins strumming softly. Music drifts lazily through the cooling night air, its ancient tones weaving through. Reed houses, carrying the faint scent of onions and river mud. You lean back, arms behind your head, staring up at stars the same Egyptians looked at thousands of years ago. Those are the souls of the righteous, someone says beside you. You glance sideways. Up there, they continue, pointing. The stars, that's what they say. Those who did well in life get to shine above us. It's a comforting thought. Whether you believe it or not, the idea of escaping the heat, flies and sand to twinkle peacefully above the world is oddly appealing. No sweating, no pigeon stew, just peace. But before you can fully contemplate your celestial potential, you feel a telltale itching on your ankle. Another mosquito. Of course. You slap your leg reflexively, sigh deeply, and consider turning in. You thank your neighbours, trading another awkward nod with the cat, who now tolerates you in the way only a semi-domesticated feline can, and return to your reed mat. It's not comfortable. It never is. But your body is too tired to care. As you lie there, wrapped in scratchy linen, full of suspicious poultry and spiritual metaphors, you realize something strange. You're still here, still surviving, still sweaty, still itchy, but surviving. And that, in ancient Egypt, might be the greatest victory of all. You wake up scratching, not metaphorically. Your arms, your legs, even the top of your head. Everything itches like you spent the night rolling in a burlap sack filled with sand and regret. Which, in a way, you did. The linen sheets clung too. You like damp paper, and the mosquito bites have joined forces to form what you can only describe as a geographical feature, Mount Itchmore. Still groggy, you sit up and stretch, your joints clicking like a row of misfiring abacuses. You glance toward the doorway and see a familiar silhouette, the neighbour's baboon. Yes, you heard that right. A real, live baboon, and he is holding one of your sandals. You lock eyes. He bares his teeth, You blink. Welcome to another morning in ancient Egypt. Animals here aren't just companions. They're sacred, symbolic, sometimes terrifying. Egyptians worshipped cats, revered ibises, and in some cases, kept exotic animals as status symbols or temple mascots. Baboons were sacred to Thoth, god of wisdom and writing, though this particular baboon seems more interested in sandal theft than divine accounting. You slowly approach, hand outstretched in the universal "please don't maul me" gesture. He chirps once, drops your sandal, and scampers off into the dusty morning like a fuzzy demon. You recover your footwear with a sigh. It's slightly chewed, but still wearable, which counts as a win today. You slip it on and head out into the courtyard, where you're immediately ambushed by the neighbor's toddler wielding a stick and wearing a pharaoh's headdress made out of woven straw. He's chasing a chicken. The chicken is winning. This is what passes for normal here. Pets in ancient Egypt weren't just for fun. They were part of the household, the economy, and in some cases, the religious system. Cats were protectors, baboons, scribes, cows, symbols of fertility, crocodiles. Well, best not keep those in the house. Unless you were a priest at the Temple of Sobek, in which case, different standards entirely. Historians still argue whether Egyptians truly domesticated animals in the modern sense, or whether it was a shared cohabitation of necessity, symbolism, and occasional chaos. Judging by today's baboon incident, you lean toward the chaos theory. You're headed to help with livestock today, goats specifically, and not the well-behaved, cartoonishly fluffy goats of modern children's books. These are ancient Egyptian goats, stubborn, vocal, and armed with the destructive enthusiasm of a toddler wielding a battering ram. Your assigned task is herding them to a nearby grazing patch just outside the village. The goats are unimpressed by your presence. One eyes you with what feels like open disdain. Another immediately begins gnawing on the hem of your linen tunic. You grab a crooked staff, channeling your inner shepherd, and begin the slow, absurd process of convincing several goats to walk in roughly the same direction at roughly the same time. You are not successful. At one point, a goat dashes into a neighbor's house. Another headbutts a basket of lentils. Children cheer. You are quickly sweating and humiliated in equal measure. A passing priest gives you a look that says, "You're doing Bastet's work," but the goat currently chewing on your wig says, "Otherwise." Eventually, with the help of a more experienced neighbor and a strategically thrown onion, the goats settle into a dusty patch of grass. You collapse nearby, panting, while the animals do absolutely nothing useful. From this vantage point, you can see a temple in the distance, its pale limestone gleaming in the sun, its flagstones hot enough to cook flatbread on. You're reminded that somewhere, someone is writing a hymn to the goddess Hathor, or painting golden ankhs on a tomb wall, while you sit here covered in goat hair and sweat. But there's something oddly peaceful about it too. The goats bleat softly. The breeze rustles papyrus reeds nearby. A dragonfly zips past your ear. For a brief moment, there's quiet. No baboons, no shouting vendors, no Senate defeats, just you, the goats, and the horizon. Of course, one of the goats chooses that moment to relieve itself on your sandal. Still, you decide not to complain. After all, you're starting to understand that ancient Egyptian life isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's about enduring it, often with a resigned sense of humor and a daily recalibration of your expectations. Today's goal isn't to win, it's to avoid being trampled by livestock. As the sun climbs higher and the goats begin to wander back home on their own schedule, which appears to be never, you rise stiffly and begin the long, slow process of nudging them back with gentle whacks of your stick and occasional pleading. One goat, the smallest, trots up beside you and bleats softly. You tentatively reach out and pat its dusty head. It does not bite you. This is now the high point of your day. Back in the village, your return is met with mild applause and slightly exaggerated tales of goat-related heroism. You do not correct anyone. You have earned this. You return home, peel off your chewed tunic, and sink onto your mat. Tomorrow may bring more chaos, more animals, more discomfort. But for now, You survived the goat patrol. And somehow, that feels like progress. The evening sun paints everything in copper and orange as you limp home, goat nudging stick in hand, a new blister forming where your sandal once pretended to be whole. You smell like sweat, straw, and faintly of baboon breath. Less a person and more a walking compost pile. But dinner is calling. Or, more precisely, someone is hollering that the fish has been cooked and there's enough for everyone, assuming the cats don't steal it first. You trudge over. Tonight's menu features, surprise, more fish. Bony, dry and grilled until it resembles a salted fossil. It's served with a side of boiled lentils and what might once have been a vegetable. Possibly. The debate among your neighbours continues. You're handed a bowl and sit cross-legged beside the fire. The smell is not terrible, though the texture is exactly what you'd expect from a fish that lived hard and died salty. Ancient Egyptians, for all their wisdom, were not particularly famous for culinary variety. As you chew carefully to avoid choking on a spine the size of a sewing needle, someone passes around a small dish of date cakes. You don't get your hopes up. These aren't frosted delicacies. They're dense, chewy, and frequently used as both dessert and dental challenge. Still, it's a sweet change from salted everything. As the fire crackles and the stars begin to emerge overhead, the elders begin telling stories. It starts, as always, with an invocation to the gods. Tonight it's Thoth, the ibis-headed deity of wisdom and moonlight. Appropriate, since tonight's story is about dreams. You lean in. The storyteller, a man with more wrinkles than papyrus, describes a dream he once had in which a crocodile sang him the secrets of the afterlife. Everyone listens with rapt attention. No one questions the logic. And the only interruption is a hiccup from a neighbor who drank one beer too many. Dreams, in ancient Egypt, aren't just nighttime entertainment. They're messages from the divine, windows into the soul, and sometimes unsolicited advice from oddly talkative reptiles. People keep dream journals on papyrus scrolls, or consult temple priests to interpret particularly vivid dreams. You wonder how they'd interpret yours, where you're endlessly stuck in a marketplace, haggling over onions that bite back. Historians still argue whether Egyptian dream interpretation was more superstition or science. Based on tonight's story, Circle, it's both. A blend of reverence, metaphor, and yes, maybe that frog really was your grandfather. The stories turn gradually sillier as the beer flows. Someone recalls a time they accidentally insulted a noblewoman's wig and had to bribe a scribe to forge an apology letter. Someone else tells of being chased by a sacred goose during a festival and being forced to leap into a canal to escape its wrath. You nearly spit lentils from laughing. You look around the fire, faces illuminated by flame, eyes reflecting both weariness and quiet joy. It's not comfort in the modern sense, but it's its own kind of contentment. You've been sunburned, mosquito-bitten, insulted by livestock, and force-fed history, but somehow, in this moment, you feel like you belong here, a little. As the fire burns lower, a neighbour begins tuning a lute. The twangy, slightly out-of-tune notes are oddly soothing. The song is familiar, a soft hymn to Nut, goddess of the sky, whose starry body stretches over the earth to cradle the dead and the weary. It's the ancient version of a lullaby, and for once, your eyelids grow heavy, not from exhaustion, but from comfort. You return to your dwelling under a canopy of stars. Your reed mat still has the exact same number of lumps. Your pillow, a curved wooden headrest, still makes no sense to your modern neck. And yet, as you lie down, stomach full of crunchy fish bones, and your heart oddly warm from the song and stories, you don't mind it quite as much tonight. The night is cool, the kind of cool that whispers rather than shouts. The usual sounds continue. The barking of distant dogs, the buzz of a million unseen insects, the occasional grunt of a neighbour's pig, but they blur into a background hum. And then, because of course, there's a loud clatter outside. You sit up just in time to see the baboon again, trotting past with what looks suspiciously like your tunic. He vanishes into the darkness before you can react. You lie back down. You're too tired to chase him, too full of lentils to care, and, honestly, too acclimated to the absurdity to even be surprised. If there's one thing ancient Egypt has taught you, it's that survival isn't about perfection. It's about adaptation. It's about eating the fish, even when it's 90% bones. It's about losing repeatedly at Senate but still showing up. It's about forging something like peace among the heat, the flies, and the absurd animals that may or may not worship the moon. Tomorrow will be the same. There will be bread and beer and blisters. There will be sand in new places and insects that defy logic. But for now, in this moment, you are still here. And that, you think, as you drift off to the sound of snoring neighbors and distant goat bleats, is enough. You wake up before the sun, not because you're eager, or because Ra's golden eye gently kissed your eyelids awake, but because someone's rooster is standing directly outside your hut, screaming like it just discovered personal betrayal. You blink into the pre-dawn gloom and silently curse poultry in all forms, sacred or otherwise. The rooster's call is joined by a chorus of groaning donkeys, creaking wagon wheels, and the low murmur of villagers already stirring. Ancient Egypt doesn't believe in sleeping in. Productivity, after all, is as sacred as piety. And today, you're due for another helping of both. You pull on what's left of your tunic, still mildly damp from yesterday's baboon adventure, and check your only pair of sandals, still here, still slightly chewed. You decide not to push your luck and slip them on quickly before anything with fur and thumbs comes to claim them again. Today's assignment is helping at the granary, which sounds noble, until you realize it mostly involves counting baskets of barley while trying not to suffocate in dust or be trampled by oxen. Still, it beats pyramid hauling or goat herding. At the granary, you're greeted by the overseer, a man who smiles like he's never smiled. He points to a mountain of grain sacks, waves vaguely toward a record-keeping scribe, and leaves you to it. Your job? Weighing baskets of barley and calling out the amounts so the scribe can tally them. It's repetitive, dusty, and has all the excitement of watching sand erode. But it's essential. Grain is wealth. Grain is tax. Grain is life. The granary is the beating heart of Egypt's economic system. And today, you're a rather tired artery. As you lift yet another heavy basket, the dust clouds thicken. You cough, squint, and wonder if it's possible to drown in barley. Nearby, the scribe scratches notes on a papyrus scroll, his reed pen dancing with practiced ease. You envy him. His job involves sitting mostly. No sand in his sandals, no barley in his nose. Still, the rhythm sets in. Lift, call, scribble. Lift, call, scribble. Occasionally, someone sneezes so violently, the dust shifts like a sandstorm. You all pretend not to notice. Historians still argue whether Egypt's bureaucratic efficiency was due to central planning genius or sheer fear of being yelled at by temple administrators. Judging by today's granary process, it's probably a little of both. Everything is measured, recorded, taxed, stored, and remeasured. No grain goes uncounted. No mistake goes unpunished, hence the looming presence of the grain inspector, who watches like a vulture in linen robes. At midday, you're allowed a brief break. You sit in the shade of a low wall, sipping tepid beer from a jug and chewing a piece of barley bread so dry it could be used as construction material. Still, you're oddly grateful. You've developed the kind of appreciation only someone who's been chased by a baboon while covered in goat spit can truly feel. During the break, the scribe joins you. He offers a small piece of date cake, likely his lunch's only redeeming quality, and you accept it with the reverence of someone offered, a sacred relic. It's chewy, faintly sweet, and tastes like gratitude. You talk for a while, about nothing mostly, how hot it is, how annoying the new tax codes are, whether crocodiles dream. He tells you he's working on a poem to Hathor in his free time, and you find yourself genuinely interested. You're not sure when this happened, when you stopped feeling like a confused time traveler and started caring about barley quotas and amateur poetry. But here you are, back to work. The afternoon heat is worse, somehow. You've stopped sweating because there's nothing left in you to sweat. Even your thoughts are sticky. But the work continues, as it always does. And then, disaster. One of the younger workers trips while lifting a basket, sending a cascade of barley across the floor. Everyone freezes. The inspector storms over like a jackal-smelling weakness, but instead of punishment, something stranger happens. People help. Instantly. Hands scoop up barley, sacks are retied, and within moments, the grain is back in place. The inspector grumbles, but doesn't yell. It's an unspoken rule. Grain is sacred, but accidents are human. The work finishes by late afternoon, and you're allowed to leave, your hands coated in grain dust, your shoulders aching, your nose permanently stuffed. But you feel okay. Not great, not good, but okay. You walk slowly through the village, watching as others go about their end-of-day rituals. A potter fires clay jars in a pit kiln. Children chase each other with sticks. An old woman sings softly, while weaving palm fronds into mats. It's all so ordinary, so ancient, so human. You pass the same cat, sitting on the same ledge, watching you like it's still not convinced you belong here. You nod politely. It blinks slowly. A truce, perhaps. At home, you rinse off with a jug of river water, change into the least, scratchy tunic you own, and sit in the doorway watching the sun slide down the horizon. Dinner will be fish again. Or lentils. Or fish and lentils. But you're oddly fine with it, because today, you were part of the great machine that kept Egypt humming. You lifted grain, cracked jokes with a scribe, didn't get fired or bitten, and didn't get cursed by any gods. That's as good a day as you've had in a while. The stars come out. The breeze is mild. You lie back and smile. You're still here. The wind changes in the middle of the night. You don't notice at first. You're too busy snoring gently on your reed mat, dreaming about a fish that's also your landlord, demanding back rent in lentils. But then a gust whistles through the doorway, rattling the reed curtain and blowing a fine mist of sand directly into your face. You wake up sputtering, eyes gritty, mouth full of dust. Again. Outside, the village is beginning to stir, not because it's morning, but because something unusual is happening. You hear murmurs, the slap of hurried sandals, the soft thud of someone tripping over a water jug. You step outside to investigate and are met by a wall of wind and swirling sand. A sandstorm is coming. Now, this isn't the Hollywood kind where people get lifted off the ground and flung into the sky while dramatic music plays. No, this is the real, relentless, deeply annoying kind. Coarse sand whipping across your skin, visibility dropping to the length of your arm, and the constant sensation that someone is pouring the Sahara directly into your ears. You rush to tie down the few things outside your hut: a woven basket, a drying fish skin, your one halfway dry tunic. Other villagers do the same, moving quickly, shouting over the rising howl of the wind. One man is frantically chasing a rolling clay pot. Two children are trying to herd a very unhappy goose back into a pen. The baboon, of course, is nowhere to be seen, probably dug into a cozy hole somewhere, laughing silently at the chaos. Sandstorms or kamzins are a known part of Egyptian life. Hot, dry, suffocating winds that roll in from the desert and make a complete mess of your plans, your home and your patience. Historians still argue whether these storms were seen as omens from the gods or simply another environmental headache. Based on your current level of suffering, you're going with omen of mild doom. The storm hits fully just after sunrise. You've sealed your door with a reed mat, stuffed gaps with old fabric, and are now huddled inside with a jug of water and a grimace. The air smells like dust, sweat, and damp linen. Every breath feels like inhaling through a burlap sack filled with old spices and powdered limestone. With nothing to do, you try to nap. That lasts 6 minutes before the wind rattles something off your roof. You try weaving. Your fingers are too sore. You consider talking to the neighbor's cat for companionship, but it's curled into a corner, eyes closed, clearly waiting for the storm to end, or for you to stop bothering it, whichever comes first. So instead, you sit, and wait, and scratch, because despite your best efforts, the sand has found its way into your clothes, your hair, your ear canals, your soul. Ancient Egypt, it seems, is determined to exfoliate you from the inside out. Hours pass. The storm howls. You sip water sparingly and gnaw on some old bread that tastes like regret and crushed gravel. You wonder how the farmers are doing, how the temple is holding up, whether the baboon has looted your sandal again. Eventually, by mid-afternoon, the storm begins to ease. The wind softens to a whisper, the air clears slightly, and villagers begin to emerge, blinking and coughing, their hair wild, their clothes dusty, their expressions identical, exhausted, annoyed, and vaguely amused. You step outside. The village looks like it's been lightly toasted. Dust clings to everything. Roofs, walls, the single goat standing in the middle of the square, looking deeply unimpressed. Someone sneezes. Another mutters a prayer to Shu, god of air and atmosphere, requesting fewer enthusiastic weather days. You second the motion. Cleanup begins immediately. People sweep sand from homes, rehang curtains, beat mats, shake out clothes, and complain loudly. You join in, if only because standing still lets the dust settle into even worse places. You find your water jug buried halfway in sand. You find a fish spine in your tunic pocket. You do not find your dignity. It probably blew away around midday. Still, you help a neighbor write a tipped basket, and in return, she gives you a fig, dusty but sweet. These little exchanges are how the village breathes again after a storm. There's no grand recovery plan, just brooms, patience, and shared exhaustion. You take the fig to the riverbank for a rinse, where the water sparkles unnaturally bright after all the dust. The Nile seems to sigh with you, like an old friend rolling its eyes at your predicament. On the walk back, someone is already telling a story about how Set, the chaotic god, sneezed too hard and accidentally caused the storm. A child giggles. Another throws a handful of sand in retaliation. Laughter returns quicker than you'd expect. Back at your hut, you collapse onto your mat, now sand-free, mostly, and lean back with a groan. Your joints ache. Your skin feels like a weathered papyrus scroll. And your soul? Well, it's still. Somewhere out there being exfoliated. But you survived the storm. You survived the fish stew, the goat mutiny, the baboon diplomacy breakdown, the lentil roulette, and now the sandstorm. Tomorrow will bring more challenges, probably involving something sharp, something smelly, or something sacred that doesn't like you. But tonight, you close your eyes to the sound of villagers singing, softly in the square, and the distant yawn of a deeply satisfied goose. You've earned this rest. You're awakened by singing. Not the melodious choir of angels kind. No, this is more of a nasal, slightly off-key chant, being belted with alarming confidence by a man carrying a basket of eels. It's sunrise again, and you've slept exactly 4 hours. Again. You roll over, groan into your elbow, and consider inventing time travel just to get a decent nap. But there's no escaping the day in ancient Egypt. You get up, scratch at the new mosquito bite on your ankle, shaped suspiciously, like the hieroglyph for misery, and begin the ceremonial donning of your dusty, mildly damp linen tunic. Today's plan, attempting to make it through the afternoon nap ritual. Yes, finally, something that doesn't involve sweat, shouting, or chasing poultry through a marketplace, in theory at least. Ancient Egyptians highly valued rest during the hottest part of the day. While the morning might be spent working fields or hauling baskets of dates, the early afternoon was for reclining, rehydrating, and quietly contemplating your place in the cosmic order, or just snoring with a cat on your chest. You like the second option. After a morning of mild chores, stirring a clay vat of fermenting beer, and untangling fishing nets that smell like sadness, You return home, determined to do this properly. You sweep out your hut. You beat the dust off your mat. Dust wins. You even splash your face with cool Nile water from a jug that probably hasn't been taunted by a baboon this week. You lie down. You close your eyes. Then a goat screams. It's not your goat. You don't own a goat. But someone's goat has decided. Now is the time to loudly narrate its own personal tragedy. You groan. You flip over. A moment later, the neighbor's toddler sprints past your doorway chasing a chicken, cackling maniacally. The chicken is wearing something sparkly. You don't ask. Moments later, someone begins pounding grain with a mortar and pestle. It sounds like they're doing it inside your skull. You try again. Deep breath. Let the sounds become ambience. Let them wash over you. Become one with the dust. Sink into the mat. A fly lands on your nose. You slap it. It dodges. You slap your own face. Outside, someone begins reciting poetry. Loudly, and with all the dramatic flair of a royal scribe who knows his audience can't leave. The poem is about a flower, or a crocodile. Possibly both. It rhymes, you think. You briefly wonder if it's a love poem or a warning. Historians still argue whether Egyptians truly enjoyed peace and quiet, or if they just accepted chaos as the background music of life. Based on current evidence, you're leaning toward the latter. Eventually, you doze off for about 11 minutes. It's not restful. Your dream features a temple full of yelling cats debating tax reform. You wake up sweating, somehow more tired than before, and smelling faintly of garlic. You don't know why. Giving up, you decide to go for a walk. The sun is high, but the breeze is merciful for once, whispering through the palm fronds like a lullaby that came too late. The village is quieter now. The mortar pounding has paused. Even the goat is silent, probably from exhaustion. You wander toward the riverbank, where several others have gathered to rest in the shade. Someone is playing a simple flute made of reed. The tune is repetitive but soothing, like the Nile's, current translated into sound. You sit with them, cross-legged, and accept a handful of dates from an old woman who doesn't speak but smiles warmly. You chew slowly, letting the sweetness push back the exhaustion. This right here, is the real nap. Not lying flat, not sleeping, just stopping. You lean back against a sun-warmed rock and listen to the conversation around you. It flows, like the river, slow, wide, meandering. People talk about the weather, about dreams they had, about the smell of the new barley harvest. No one raises their voice. No one rushes. A child giggles softly. The breeze picks up slightly. You finally exhale, and then, yes, of course, someone's baboon runs past with a stolen sandal in its mouth. You all watch it go. No one chases it. No one even reacts anymore. This too is part of the day. Eventually, the small group begins to disperse. People stretch, yawn, return to their tasks. You walk home slowly, feeling lighter. The nap never really happened, but the pause did. And somehow, that was enough. Back in your hut, you notice your pillow, your wooden headrest, is positioned just so. You lower yourself onto it, letting the curved support cradle your neck like a gentle question mark. It still doesn't make sense. It's still uncomfortable. But you're beginning to see the logic. This too trains endurance, maybe not for sleep, but for life. As evening approaches, and you prepare to face another round of fish stew and Senate-related emotional damage, you reflect on the nap that wasn't. Even in failure, ancient Egypt has taught you something valuable. Peace is not absence, it's acceptance. And today, you accept it a lot. You're beginning to suspect that sleep in ancient Egypt isn't really about rest. It's a soft, negotiated truce between you, the heat, the bugs, and the general chaos of daily life. Tonight, you're hoping for better dreams. You've washed up. You've eaten your fill of lentils. You've swatted away mosquitoes with the resigned flair of someone who knows they're losing the war. The mat has been smoothed. your reed curtain tied down to keep out any bold baboons. The cat is already curled up by the door, twitching its tail in a way that suggests it has claimed your hut as its second summer home. You lie down, adjusting your wooden headrest with the delicate precision of someone who's been tricked by this device before. Still too firm, still too high, still shaped like a question you'll never answer. But you're tired, deeply tired, the kind of exhaustion that settles in your bones like silt. So you close your eyes and surrender. And then the dreams begin. At first, they're harmless. You're walking through a date grove, the sun warm and filtered, the trees bending just slightly toward you in a way that's oddly flattering. Someone hands you a bowl of honey cakes. The cat is wearing a necklace and saying something approving in the voice of your grandmother. Then things shift. Suddenly, you're in the temple. It's night, though the stars inside the ceiling are painted gold and shimmer like they're alive. The priests are chanting, though their mouths don't move. You're standing before a statue of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the dead, and he's watching you, not sternly, but curiously, like he's trying to remember where he's seen you before. Someone presses a papyrus scroll into your hands. It's covered in drawings, but none you recognize. Figures with fish heads, boats made of feathers, what looks like a baboon stealing a scribe's wig. You open your mouth to ask a question, but no sound comes out. Then the floor falls away, and you're floating gently down the Nile on a bed of woven palm fronds, passing crocodiles with feathers for teeth, and a group of ibis birds playing sonnet with the moon. You've reached the part of the night where your brain gives up on logic. Dreams, in ancient Egypt, were considered sacred, important messages from the gods, or glimpses into the unseen world. Temples had special rooms reserved for dream incubation, where people would sleep in hopes of divine guidance. A particularly vivid dream could change your fate, or doom you. Historians still debate how seriously these dreams were interpreted, whether they were ceremonial theatre or actual tools for decision-making. But here, in the flickering theatre of your own subconscious, they feel completely real. In the dream, you're now riding a cat the size of a chariot down a corridor lined with singing reeds. Bastet appears at the end, offering you a cup of wine and an expression that clearly says, "You've eaten too many lentils before bed." You wake with a start. Darkness, stillness, crickets. Somewhere, a dog barks once and then goes silent. You're soaked in sweat, unsure whether from heat or spiritual revelation. The cat is still asleep. You sit up slowly, rubbing your face, waiting for your heartbeat to return to normal speed. The dreams fade quickly, like ink drying on hot papyrus. You remember only fragments, the ibis board game, the curious statue, the floating boat. You're unsure whether the gods were trying to communicate something important, or just entertain themselves at your expense. Still, the dream has left its mark. You feel disoriented but oddly calm, like you've walked through something meaningful, even if it made absolutely no sense. You pour yourself a small cup of water from the jug near your mat, sipping slowly, listening to the night. The air has cooled slightly, enough to make you shiver a little, though your skin is still sticky from the day's grime. You lie back down, and this time, the wooden headrest doesn't feel quite so cruel. Maybe your neck has simply given up. Maybe it's starting to accept this new reality. You wonder if dreams were ancient Egypt's version of therapy. Sacred, strange, but necessary for surviving a world filled with gods who fought in the sky, and neighbors who kept feral pets. You close your eyes again, bracing yourself for another round. You wouldn't be surprised if the baboon shows up, or Anubis, or the singing fish. Whatever happens, you know one thing for certain. In ancient Egypt, even your dreams require stamina. You wake up slowly this time, not from a rooster's battle cry or a goat's dramatic soliloquy, but from something gentler, a flicker of morning light dancing across your eyelids and the faint rhythmic splash of someone hauling water from the Nile. For the first time since arriving in ancient Egypt, you feel almost rested. Almost. You stretch cautiously, checking your joints like a scribe inspecting a worn scroll. Nothing feels broken. Nothing's bleeding. Your mosquito bites haven't formed a union. You call that a win. Today's task? Temple cleaning. You briefly consider faking an illness. I can't possibly scrub floors today. My soul is full of sand. But the temple doesn't wait. The gods demand sparkle. And you're the unfortunate mortal tasked with delivering it. Arriving at the temple, you're greeted with the same towering columns, the same fragrant haze of incense, and the same priest who always looks like he knows you stole a fig that one time. You're handed a woven reed brush and a ceramic jar of soapy water infused with lotus petals and something unidentifiable but pungent. Your assignment: scrub the floor tiles in the inner courtyard, an area used for everything from processions to prayer to the occasional extremely dignified goose parade. The floor is stone, uneven, and stubbornly refuses to shine. Still, you get to work. The rhythm is almost hypnotic. Dip, scrub, rinse, repeat. Occasionally, someone walks past and nods solemnly, as if you're doing sacred work instead of just redistributing centuries of foot grime. As you scrub, your mind wanders, always dangerous in ancient Egypt. You think about your first day here, the sun shock, the sandy bread, the goat with the vendetta. You think about your slowly developing relationships, the scribe who shares his poetry, the neighbor who offers dates, the cat who now tolerates your presence. You've been here long enough to know when to duck under an awning for shade, when to expect a marketplace price hike, and how to win, occasionally, at Senet. You've learned that ancient Egypt isn't a place of glamour. It's not golden thrones and treasure rooms, at least not for people like you. It's bruised palms and stubborn sand and constantly wondering if your dinner is looking back at you. Yet here you are, alive, more or less intact, and slowly becoming something else. Not just a visitor, not just a sufferer, but maybe a little someone who belongs. Your hands sting from the scrubbing. The soap water smells like sadness. A papyrus beetle scuttles across your sandal, takes one look at you, and changes course. You are apparently not worth investigating. After a while, a priest brings you a bowl of cool barley water. You sip gratefully, ignoring the floating bits. It's earthy, faintly sweet, and oddly refreshing. You thank him, and for the first time he smiles. Not the smirking, you're terrible at sweeping smile, but something close to genuine approval. Historians still debate whether temple staff saw their work as drudgery or divine service. Based on today's experience, it's probably both. You feel deeply humbled and mildly annoyed at the same time. Like cleaning your grandmother's house, only the furniture is sacred, and the consequences of breaking something might involve jackal-headed judgment. After the cleaning is complete, you're invited to stay for a brief ritual, something small, a midday offering to Ma'at, goddess of truth and balance. You sit quietly near the back, watching the ceremony unfold. The priests chant. They offer flowers, incense, and cool water in beautifully carved vessels. A scribe records the ritual with practiced strokes. You catch yourself mouthing along with a few of the words. You don't even remember learning them. Afterward, you're handed a single lotus flower. It's a small gesture, but somehow it feels monumental, like a nod from the divine, or at least a tip of the hat from the cosmic bureaucracy. You walk home slowly, lotus in hand. The streets are quiet. Even the baboon seems to be napping. A breeze stirs the dust without choking you. You take that as a sign of favor from Shu, god of air, and whisper a half-hearted thank you under your breath. You pass a boy sketching birds into the dirt with a stick. You pass two women weaving mats, laughing quietly. You pass a goat that gives you a look of pure judgment. Everything is strangely peaceful. Back at your hut, you set the lotus gently in your water jug. It floats awkwardly, petals already wilting a little. Still, it's the most beautiful thing in the room. You lie down on your mat, arms sore, knees aching, and stare at the ceiling. It's cracked. It always was. But now you know how the light falls through it in the late afternoon. Now you know when the breeze will slide in. Now you know which reed makes that faint creaking sound. You know, that's the difference. You're no longer a stranger here. You're just a tired Egyptian on a hot day with sand in your teeth and a lotus in your jug. And weirdly, that feels okay. The sun begins to set on what might be your most ordinary and strangely meaningful day in ancient Egypt. You sit at the threshold of your mud brick hut, knees drawn up, arms resting, the last rays of light sliding across the village like honey poured over clay. The sounds around you are familiar now. The low bleating of goats, the rhythmic slap of a woman washing clothes by the river, a lute plucking out a slow, mournful tune, the distant and entirely predictable sound of your favourite baboon knocking over another water jug. You don't even flinch anymore. Tonight is like every other night. Dinner will be simple, the gossip will be louder than necessary, and sleep will come in whatever patchy form the night allows. You're tired, permanently. But it's no longer the kind of tired that comes from confusion or resistance. It's the kind that settles in with you, nods once and says, "Yes, we live here now." The evening meal is bread, lentils, and a few dried figs from a generous neighbour. You sit in a circle with others, passing bowls, sharing bits of news. Someone sings a bit of a hymn to Isis. Someone else tells a joke about a scribe, a goose, and a very confused fisherman. You don't get it. You laugh anyway. The cat whines between your legs. She doesn't bite you. You count this as proof of personal growth. Later, someone suggests one last round of Senate. You almost say no. Memories of previous defeats still sting. But tonight, you feel brave. Or tired enough not to care. You play. You lose. You enjoy it. As the fire dies down, stars begin to appear overhead. You lie back on your mat once more, hands behind your head. The soft rustle of palm fronds outside your window, like a lullaby composed by wind. Your body is sore, your feet blistered, your back shaped vaguely like a question mark. But your mind is quiet. Not because there's nothing left to worry about, but because, for the first time, none of it matters quite so urgently. You've survived another day in ancient Egypt, and that is no small feat. You think of the gods now, not with fear, but with a kind of reverence born of proximity. You've lived among their rituals, swept their courtyards, eaten their offerings, after the priests, of course, and dreamt beneath their stars. You don't need them to send signs. The signs are everywhere. The Nile still flows. The sun still rises. The barley still grows. And you are still here. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. The night deepens, slow and soft, as if even time itself begins to rest. Your breath matches the quiet rhythm of the crickets beyond your doorway. The stars above glow gently, distant, pinpricks of silver across a sky as deep and calm as the Nile at midnight. The air is cooler now, brushing softly across your arms, no longer harsh, but gentle, almost kind. You shift slightly on your mat, the worn reed fibers creaking faintly. Beneath you, your muscles are heavy now, in the good way. The kind of tired that doesn't pull, doesn't ache. It simply settles. You feel it in your fingers, in your toes, in the space behind your eyes. Outside, the last murmurs of the village begin to fade. A pot being stacked, a quiet laugh, the gentle mewl of a kitten calling to its mother. These sounds taper into stillness until only the whisper of the wind remains, threading through palm branches in long, slow sighs. You close your eyes and let yourself sink. Let the day go. Let the sandstorms, the fishbones, the baboons and barley all drift away. Now there is only night, the cool hush, the lullaby of silence, the long, slow exhale of a world that's gone to sleep. You are safe. You are still. You are exactly where you are meant to be. Sleep now. Sleep.